if you look at the classic symbol of this whole conspiratorial network, I'm talking about the pyramid and all-seeing eye, which you see on the dollar bill and the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, and in so many other areas. The number of times you see it coming up on animations, children's animations, is ridiculous. There is an agreement, if you look at it through religions and these other cultural belief systems, that there is an unseen force that is manipulating human society. If you look at Christianity, you could talk about the devil or Satan. If you look at Islam, they talk about Shaitan or Iblis. You look at the Gnostic belief system and they talk about the demiurge or Yod-Baoth.
Do you believe that we have landed on the moon?
Well, the moon is a massive story because I don't think the moon is what we would call natural. I think it was brought here. The moon is a massive center for manipulation of human society.
What is the most surprising thing you foresee coming to light in the coming year?
I do think that we are heading towards a time when
David Icke, thank you so much for making time to be here again. David, what, from your perspective, is one thing humanity has forgotten about itself that creates the greatest suffering in the world?
Who it is. Over the last, 36 years, I've been on this, shall we say, journey of discovery. That's been the theme all along. And what you see are many and various ways in which that fake self-identity is downloaded to us. It's my view, as I've explained in detail in the books, that we live in a fake reality, a simulated reality, akin to a virtual reality computer game. And that simulation, that quote matrix, is designed to put us in a fake reality so that we have a fake self-identity. A self-identity that identifies with the body, the color of the body, the religion of the body, the income bracket of the body, whatever. And that if you self-identify with the labels of human, because we're not human, we're having a human experience. Human is an experience. It's not an I. The I is consciousness. Ultimately, all consciousness. It connects into all consciousness, infinite awareness. But if you're going to manipulate, isolate, and make myopic your target population, then you don't want them knowing that they are an expression of all that is, has been, and ever can be. You want them to think that they are Bill driving the bus or Beryl on the down the call center. That's what you want them to think they are. And so we have these labels that relate to a human life, which we take to be an I when it's just an experience, brief as well. And so we identify with male, female, race, whatever. And it's just an experience. But of course, they give wonderful potential for the key element of any few seeking to control the many, and that's divide and rule, because they provide fault lines of division which you can play your target population off against itself. So they're too busy fighting each other to realize that actually the strings attached to everybody are held by the same hand. And so the other alternative that we're given is that we are subordinate to some judgmental God, and we have to keep happy to make sure that we don't go into the fires of hell and make sure we go to heaven and all that stuff. And the dynamic between humans and God is one of subordination, one of little me and big God. And both of those alternatives are designed to separate us perceptually, and thus in terms of frequency, vibration, influence from the true I, which is consciousness. And this has expressed itself in so many different ways, this targeting unity with separation. And we're now heading into what is really, in so many ways, the end game of that. This is the real reason for it. And that's AI-human fusion, where they want to connect artificial intelligence to the human brain. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind. It becomes the creator of human perception, the dictator of human perception. And once that situation is in place, it won't be asking questions like, who am I? Where am I? What is this place? Who runs this world and to what end? Those questions won't be asked because AI won't ask them. And it gets frustrating sometimes because we are hurtling now so fast into that reality. China being the blueprint for the totality of it. And we are allowing ourselves to get caught in diversions, attention diversion, which is how they keep our eyes off the ball, if you like, and believing that the conspiracy is about politics and that level of life, when actually that's just the play out level, the real conspiracy, the real control system is this separation of incarnate awareness, consciousness, mind from its true I, which is consciousness.
You believe that non-human astral entities are pulling strings among the puppets of politicians and such. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. And I think if you look at the classic symbol of this whole conspiratorial network, it perfectly describes the situation. So I'm talking about the pyramid and all-seeing eye, which you see on the dollar bill and the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States, and in so many other areas. The number of times you see it coming up on animations, children's animations, is ridiculous. And what I'm saying is that, and this is supported if you look at it from the perspective of endless religions and cultural beliefs through the ages. You have at the top the all-seeing eye at the top of the pyramid. And that, for me, is representative of a state of consciousness that is extraordinarily distorted, chaotic, and it's basically extraordinarily disharmonious in the way it plays out and the way it sees everything. But it's not stupid in the sense that it's very clever, and not least in its ability to manipulate perception. So if you look around the different religions and the different cultural beliefs, what I'm always looking for is patterns of agreement between groups that would normally not agree on very much. And there is an agreement, if you look at it through religions and these other cultural belief systems, that there is, first of all, an unseen force that is manipulating human society, goes under various names in different parts of the world and different eras, and that force does not have the best interests of humanity at heart. So if you look at Christianity, you could talk about the devil or Satan. If you look at Islam, they talk about Shaitan or Iblis. You look at the Gnostic belief system, and they talk about the demiurge or Yoda Baoth. And there are different descriptions, different names for this force all over the world in these different eras. And so that's the consciousness that pervades the pyramid, the hierarchical pyramid. And that consciousness is deeply, deeply, almost unimaginably psychopathic. And so being psychopathic, it has a deletion of what I call the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior, which is empathy. The ability to put yourself in the feelings of those you're affecting so that you limit what you will do in relation to them. It's also a psychopathic state of consciousness that does not have the ability to feel compassion. Now, first of all, this consciousness pervades the entire hierarchy. So the part of the hierarchy, the key part of the hierarchy where it's all coming from, is in this astral dimension, which interpenetrates this one on a different wavelength. And again, there are entities that are basically expressions, manifestations, extensions of this state of consciousness. And again, in Christianity, they would call them demons. In Islam, they'd call them jinn. In the Gnostic belief system, they call them archons, Greek for rulers. And that then plays out, this pyramid as it comes down, enters the human realm, the human frequency band, because that's what this world is. It's a band of frequency. And that's where you come across this, what I call global cult, which I've been exposing since the early 1990s, of a web of global secret societies with an interlocking mission control force directing the direction of human society. And again, this psychopathic consciousness expresses itself through that global cult hierarchy in the human realm. So suddenly you start to see why it is not true, as so many people say, when they say they wouldn't do that. Well, the first thing to grasp is that, quote, these expressions of this consciousness at its various levels, are not like you in terms of your attitude to life. So if you have empathy, then there's a limit to what you will do in relation to other people. If you don't have empathy, you have no emotional consequence whatsoever. And thus there are no limits. And this is why at all these different levels of this hierarchy, which the astral part of it created this matrix, this simulation, will create situations of war, conflict in its various forms, of deprivation, of hunger, of suffering, because it has no emotional consequence. In fact, it feeds off the energy that humanity generates in states of that those events generate. And so we can start to understand why the world is as it is when this hierarchy is driving it. And what it's seeking to do is to pull humanity into the frequency of this consciousness, this, shall we call it, Yoda Baoth consciousness. So the entirety of humanity becomes an expression of that consciousness. And, you see the potential for that. I have this phrase, what you fight, you become. And so many times you'll see people, say in a state of war or whatever, well, they'll do things that are often everything they would have railed against before. They become this consciousness in the situations that they're facing. And again, the final throw to encompass humanity as expressions of this consciousness is AI human fusion. Because, AI, people could talk about AI and AI this and AI that, but there's a question, what is AI? And there's different levels of it. There's algorithmic AI. There's the AI that they're feeding the postings of humanity on the internet. They're feeding that to this other level of AI. So that level becomes more knowledgeable about humanity than humanity does. But what I'm saying is that this level of AI that they want to fuse with the human brain and the human body is actually this very consciousness that I'm describing. So we become too extensions of it. And so, we are in a situation where, messing around and thinking, sometime over the rainbow, I'll respond to this. Well, that's not good enough, because it's unfolding hour by hour now. And when you see how far China's got along the road of AI control and digital control, and that's where the rest of the world is meant to be going. And China's not finished yet; it's got a long way to go. But of course, the more more control you get, the more control you can impose, and it gets quicker and quicker and quicker until they're where they want to get in the end.
I'd like to take a moment and share a word from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you and us by these delicious, delectable longevity gummies referred to as MitoPure from Timeline. If you're experiencing things like brain fog, lower energy, trouble with recovery after working out, it could be supportive to you to support yourself at a cellular level. That is exactly what this compound referred to as urolithin A. This is the #1 doctor recommended urolithin A supplement on the market, and it promotes cellular energy, muscle strength, and longevity. What it does is it supports your mitochondria go through a process called mitophagy. So it's the breakdown of the old, gunky, crappy, crummy mitochondria to replenish with the new ones. Mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of your cells, and this stuff, the urolithin A, in these MitoPure gummies is helpful to replenish those mitochondria. If you want to try it for yourself, you can go to timeline.com/align and you'll get 20% off. And also Timeline's clinically proven formula is now available at a new lower price. MitoPure now starts at $99 with the exact same science and formula. And my listeners get 20% off by going to timeline.com/align. I hope you guys enjoy. Do you believe that presently there's a lot of talk around disclosure and aliens and alien sightings, it seems like that's becoming more prominent. Do you believe that aliens and ancient gods and archons and Anunnaki and Nephilim and interdimensional beings, are they all different interpretations of the same thing? What are aliens from your perspective, and
Well,
are they coming?
yeah, I think there could be many and various ways that the non-human expresses itself. But I do think that we have been subjected to manifestations of this force that match the cultural state of the day. So at one time, you saw like the fairy or whatever, the fairies, and in Ireland they talk about the little people and all that stuff. And I think they can manifest these astral entities I'm talking about. They can manifest according to the cultural expression of the time. And so as we've got more and more technological, they have become more and more expressing themselves as what we would call extraterrestrials. But that's not necessarily the only way that they can express themselves, that they can manifest themselves. I think the more you understand about the astral dimension and the ability to project yourself in almost any form you want, it starts to blur the lines between being dogmatic about this is what they look like, this is what this lot look like. So I think that there's a lot of things that we just have to if you like, let the jury stay out for a bit before we make a judgment on being dogmatic about this is how it is. But one way that they do express themselves and have for some considerable time is in a reptilian form. They also obviously express themselves in the form we call the Greys and others like the Nordics and what have you. But there's the question in the end of what are they ultimately, because the way the Gnostics described the archons is that they could express themselves in various ways, and they do say in the writings that were found, the Gnostic writings that were found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, which are supposedly go back about 1,600 years, they were found in earthen jars and then eventually decoded. They do talk about the fact that a kind of a reptilian form or a form like a fetus with big black eyes, as the Gnostic texts describe them, very much describing the Greys, you would think. They do manifest in that way often, but in their base form, their pure energy, their energetic forms. And I think that the one thing we know about authority is it lies to us. And the higher you go in authority, it lies even more and more often and basically all the time in many instances. And, once I heard towards the end of last year that in June of this year, the Spielberg film Day of Disclosure was coming out, or Disclosure Day was coming out, I thought, this is going to be the year they'll do it, because that will be peg they'll hang it on, and this is the year they're going to come out with a lot of this stuff. And within weeks, Trump was announcing that he told the Pentagon to release the UFO files, etc., and we're supposed to be getting them in the next few weeks or whatever. But what we can say for certain is they won't be telling us the truth. They'll be giving us a version of it which suits the agenda of human control. And a diversion and misdirection. It won't be telling you what's actually happening.
I tend to have a belief that the foundation or substrate of human consciousness or consciousness itself is love, and anything that is not in love is a separation or diversion away from love into fear. And so the concept of certain entities or interdimensional beings or humans or children or anything that are acting in a way that would be psychopathic or anything outside of love and compassion and grace, kind of like Christ consciousness, is rooted in some type of trauma that diverted them away from love. That's my general perspective on the world. And I believe that all things eventually go to truth, and truth is love, and all things, it's like a mathematical, geometric pattern eventually going towards love is my perspective on the world. If that is true, from your perspective, is there some root trauma in the universe that the universe is working on unwinding within itself?
I think that, I think there's a lot of truth in what you've just said. But I think that the base trauma is separation. It's this loss of connection with the true I. And that loss manifests itself as bewilderment, literally being lost. Where am I? Who am I? Completely losing the memory of the true and infinite I. And that in itself is traumatic, even if people don't realize what the source of their trauma and their emotional state really is. And the point is that if you look at the why is this matrix, this simulation being created to entrap human perception or consciousness perception? It's actually to put us in a situation of trauma in all its various ways, to generate the energy that this consciousness and the expressions and extensions of this consciousness feed off. When the Morpheus character in The Matrix held up a battery and said, the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to turn humans into this, it was a profound truth.
Built to keep us under control, to turn us into this.
To keep us under control, to so that we generate energy of a particular type. Because if you are in a state of chaotic, schismatic imbalance, then the energy you want to absorb, the energy that you can absorb, frequency to frequency, if you like, must be in that same band of frequency. So you're looking to generate through humans these states of chaotic upheaval, low vibrational energy, chaotic energy. And so what you have is this global cult, as I call it, this global network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized. Most of the people in it won't know the big picture. That is serving the interests of this consciousness and this astral, these astral entities, to generate events in the world and happenings in the world to which the human race responds mentally and emotionally and in doing so generates the very energy in the very frequency that they absorb and feed off. It's well known in mainstream science that every time we think and every time we feel emotion, the more powerful emotion, the better, the more we generate frequencies. Every time we think, every time we feel emotion, we're generating frequencies. And there's a field of energy around us that basically represents in its frequency state our perceptual state, the sum total of our thoughts and emotional responses. And the idea is that we are manipulated in the experiences globally and individually that generate this low vibrational energy. And they feed off it. The satanic rituals that they do and the human sacrifice rituals they do, they're all based, including the pedophilia, on which this whole global cult, Satanism and pedophilia, is the cement that holds it together in so many ways. Why? Because it generates this energy that they feed off. They're particularly after the energy of children before the state of puberty changes the energetic field, or the energetic field changes the chemical nature of the body. They want that prepubescent energy. And this is why, whether you look back into the ancient world where they were sacrificing, quote, young virgins to the gods, or whether you look at the secret world of Satanism and how often it's children they're targeting, and then you look at the pedophilia. I mean, every now and again it comes up, whether it's the Epstein files or the Jimmy Savile story in Britain or whatever, who was very connected to the royal family, big friend of King Charles, who's in America as we speak. And I hear people say, oh yeah, the Epstein network was the biggest child trafficking network in the world. Ludicrous. No, it's not. The whole foundation of the global cult is Satanism and pedophilia, because of the energetic nature of how they feed off people. So, and therefore, when something like the Epstein network or the Savile network or whatever come to light, the Dutro network that locked into the rich and famous of Belgium, etc., comes to light, it's just, I call them gateways to the cesspit, because they can, if you follow the trail, they can take you into the wider web. But they're just bits, they're like just tips of a vast global iceberg that most of which is below the surface. And so if you are abusing a child, a prepubescent child, then what's their emotional, mental state going to be? It's going to be in fear, which is the major generator of this energy, fear, terror. It's going to be in a low vibrational state because of what's being done to the child. And these entities are feeding off that. And this is what's happening in satanic rituals. They're putting the sacrificed person, if you like, often a child, through a particular ritual to generate the maximum terror in the victim. And so when the ancients were talking about sacrificing young virgins to the gods, they were saying it was as a gift to the gods. And my question when I came across all this was, well, what's the gift then? What do the gods get out of this? And the answer is they get energy, because if I'm looking at you and you're in an emotional state, I can see that from your facial expression and I can see it from your body language. What I can't see is the energy you're giving off as a result of that emotional state, because that's an astral energy. It's going into the astral. And so these entities are overseeing from the astral these rituals, and they're feeding off the energy. And then the Satanists in the human realm who are conducting the ritual, they drink the blood, which by then is laced with adrenaline caused by the terror of the victim, and that's adrenochrome and the stuff that so many people are starting to talk about now. So we're dealing with a human race that basically, overwhelmingly, just wants a nice life and to get on with it and look after the family and all that stuff, and has an agenda for wanting to, I don't know, what they call better yourself and, have a nicer house and nicer home and what have you. But that which is controlling that situation from the shadows has a completely different agenda. To them, we are merely batteries and generators of low vibrational energy. And so they have to keep giving us reasons to respond that way. And that's why, if you look through what we think we know about human history anyway, first of all, the few have always controlled the many. We should be asking ourselves how that can be. And that will tell us a lot, not least about ourselves. But it's also the fact that human history is awash with wars and suffering and deprivation and slaughter and psychopathy and all these things. Why can't we just get on? Because we're not meant to get on, because if we got on and went into harmonious states, what you call love, we wouldn't be generating the energy that they want.
How is that energy extracted exactly?
Well, it's extracted because we generate it. We project it. When you meet someone, for instance, and they might seem to be quite nice. Then they, facially, their expressions and their demeanor, they might, oh yeah, he's a nice bloke. But then you go, I just got bad vibes from him. I don't know. I can't explain. I just got bad vibes from that guy. Well, that's because we can hide our true self with our facial expressions and our body language, if we become skilled at that, and a lot of these people absolutely are trained in it. But you can't hide your energetic state, and that's why you feel bad vibes. You think, well, I shouldn't be feeling bad vibes. He seems a nice bloke, but you are, and invariably you'll prove correct with a passage of events. And so we're generating it. We're literally like generators of this energy, and they're just feeding off it. But there seems to be, the more that I study the afterlife nature of this, because this matrix is multi-leveled, including the astral, there seems to be a big energetic taking immediately after death, or pretty much immediately after death. It's like they kind of just feed off all the residue, low vibrational energy that a life can accumulate over a human life. But of course, again, you have the wheel of samsara, which is this reincarnation wheel, which I think is absolutely real. But and therefore you stay in the matrix, just moving between different levels of it. But there's ways to get out of it, and the way to get out of it is the very same way that we can become quote enlightened while we're still in a human body, and that is self-identity. For me, when I started out in 1990, 1991, my head blew off and I was launched onto this completely different path. Although I can see my earlier life was leading there. And the only people that would give me a platform in those early years were what was called the New Age. And even they put me in the smallest room at the end of a night of the conference when everyone had gone home, basically, and there was a handful of people stayed around to listen. That conspiracy nutter, he's on tonight, when we've all gone home. But what I did when I went to these conferences, a lot of them in America, in fact, most of them in America, is I went around and I watched the various speakers during the day when it was big crowds there. And what when I looked at it, I thought, this sounds really bloody complicated. That you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to do the other to become enlightened and all these things they talked about. I don't think it's complicated at all. I think it's actually dead simple.
Yep.
The way it plays out can appear complicated here and there, but the basis of it for me is dead simple. People say, what's the solution? And I'm not interested in solutions, because solutions invariably lead to more problems in need of more solutions. It's like an eddy going round and round and round in the river. I'm looking for what's causing the problem. What's the cause? Because if you remove the cause, the problem itself, which the cause manifests, must disappear. And then it's gone. So my observations led me to see that the problem, quote, was that humanity in general was living a false, fake self-identity. It was perceiving itself to be some manifestation from an ancient primordial soup that somehow has consciousness for a very short while, and then the lights go out when the body does. I've never felt that was all my life since I was a kid. I've never followed that one, and nor have I followed the idea that we are subordinate to some judgmental God. It's my strong view, and I do articulate this in the roadmap, that religions are worshipping the fake God. They're worshipping this Yoda-Bayoff consciousness. They think it's God, and it's all been set up, and all the religions and what have you have been set up to worship that God. And the vast majority of people in the religions have no idea. They think they're worshipping something positive when they're not. They're worshipping this Yoda-Bayoff consciousness. And interestingly, the focus of worship, which is basically me down here, you up there, I'm worshiping you, I'm on my knees. That's a low vibrational energy, which is part of this energetic sustenance that they feed off. So if they can get you to worship that which is feeding off you, well, there's an energetic connection, which is that they're able to feed off. What do they say? Energy flows where attention goes, and so the foundation for me of first of all seeing through the illusion here, and also getting out of this entire matrix nonsense after what we call death, is the same thing. It's self-identity. So if I am self-identifying with being a human, I am identifying immediate with limitation. I'm identifying with I can't. I'm identifying with it's not possible. And therefore, that sense of self-identity, that myopic sense of self-identity, oh, I have no power. I have to look to them people in authority to tell me I've got no power. That, first of all, contracts the amount of infinite awareness that you're going to access, because your self-identity is focusing your myopia upon a very small part of infinite awareness, and you are going to generate low vibrational energy because you have a low vibrational self-identity. And if you think you are subordinate to some judgmental God, I'm down here, he's up there, then again, you're in a state of subordination. What does Muslim actually mean? It means one who submits. Same with all of them. And so, again, you're in a myopia, or you might now believe in some kind of afterlife, either heaven or hell, but more than the lights go out at their death. But you're still in a state of subordination. Therefore, you're still in a state of low vibrational myopic perception. Now, when you say, okay, I'm now going to redefine my self-identity. I am having a human experience via a vehicle called a human, just a human body. But that's not what I am. I'm not the labels of a human life. I'm not human. I'm just having a human experience. What I am is all that is, has been, and ever can be. That's my real eternal I state. And what that does, as your sense of self-identity expands and expands into the infinite reality that we are, as your self-identity expands, your awareness expands and expands and expands. And when you are in this low vibrational arena of the matrix, you are in the matrix and you are of the matrix. So all your information is basically coming from the matrix, whether it's coming from the astral in terms of so-called intuition or whatever, or whether it's coming from the matrix media, or the matrix Silicon Valley, or the matrix school system. You are in the matrix and of the matrix, and you're forming your perceptions from the information you receive from within the matrix band of frequency. But as you expand your awareness deeper and deeper and deeper into the field, you eventually traverse the limits of the matrix. Now you are in the matrix, because that's how this is what holds us here. But you're not of the matrix in terms of your perspective of what you see. And people have said to me over the years, why couldn't I see it before? It's so bloody obvious. But you were here before, until you couldn't see it. You were in the matrix and of the matrix. Now you're starting to tap in to awareness, insight, knowledge beyond the walls of the matrix. And thus you are basically, from your perceptual level, looking in on it. And suddenly you can see how all the dots connect, which you couldn't see before. Or you could see before was random dots. But now you can see how they connect. And it's this expansion of self-identity that is the it's the foundation of entering these levels of awareness, where we tap into the the true I and the eternal I. Now, if you look at the alternative to that, you look at the inversion of that. Now look at what human society is designed to do by this pyramid of psychopathic consciousness in all its expressions. It's to make people more myopic, not more expansive, more myopic. The last thing they want is you doing that because, oh my God, they're going to suss what's going on. Oh no, we want you myopic. And so what they do, because if you are a few, and it is a few by comparison with what we're told is 8 billion, who are driving the direction of the world, then how do you, as a few, and like I said earlier, throughout known human history, the few have always controlled the many. How do you do that? It should be mathematically impossible, but it's not, because of two things. One, they seek to isolate the consciousness of the target population in belief systems, rigid belief systems, unquestioning belief systems. They can be religious. There's loads of religions, and they want loads of different religions for reasons I'll come to in a second. And it can be political, left, right, center, whatever. And you're seeing the division there in America very clearly, that where the religious, the political ideologies are being played off against each other. And it might be a cultural belief system, whatever, as long as it's unquestioning and rigid, they gotcha. As I've said so many times over the years, they don't care what you believe so long as you believe it rigidly and without question, because then they gotcha. Because what that happens is basically you're putting a prison cell over your mind. If you are following a particular religion or political ideology, then if you go beyond the limits of that ideology, that story, then you're no longer one of us. You're no longer following that story. You're no longer of that belief anymore. You're not one of us. And if you go outside of that, in religion, you're a blasphemer or an infidel. If you leave a political ideology and start to explore beyond it, where infinity's beyond it of possibility, then you are a traitor or a traitor to your class or whatever. And the thing about religion is it's not what my father used to call bricks and mortar religion alone, like a synagogue or a temple or a church or a cathedral or a mosque. It's a mentality. And I look at society and I see the same mentality being played off against the same mentality. I see it all the time. Like religions are played off against religions, but the classic is orthodox science. Orthodox science is a religion. It's exactly what I'm describing. Its holy books are the holy books of scientific orthodoxy. And if you go beyond the orthodoxy, you're not called a blasphemer, or you are in effect, but you're called a pseudoscientist or a dabbler in the paranormal, just as you are called in religion. If you go into the deeper into the exploration of reality, you're dabbling with the occult, which is a word just means hidden. And that's the key. Hidden knowledge. That's what they don't want us to have. That's what these rigid belief systems that we are encouraged and pressured to have. That's what it's stopping us, including the orthodox science prison cell. Don't go into the unknown knowledge and see what other possibilities there are. Just stay with this possibility. Now, once you've got people across your target population in this state of rigidity of belief in whatever form, you've got the perfect environment now to play them off against each other, to divide and rule. And those are the two things: rigid belief systems, many of them, and then play them off against each other to divide and rule. So currently in Iran, we have the Christian world, in terms of Trump claims to be Christian world, and you've got the Judaistic world in Israel fighting the Muslim world in the form of Iran. And of course, not just the Muslim world, Iran's version of the Muslim world. So another thing that happens, and you see this throughout history, is something will be created like a religion, and then they start breaking the religion up into warring factions. So the religion is fighting other religions and tussling with other religions, but it's also at war with itself, within itself, like Sunni and Shia and Protestant and Catholic. And they're creating this very environment of conflict, which generates the energy, which generates the sustenance for that, which is orchestrating the whole thing.
You shared earlier about if we are worshiping a capricious, jealous God that desires to be worshipped, ultimately we're worshiping something rooted in fear. And we become that which we pay attention to, and where attention goes, energy flows. And so if we're pouring our attention into something that's rooted in fear, then we keep ourselves bound in the web of fear. There's a quote from Ram Dass, paraphrasing. He didn't say exactly like this, but something along the lines of, who you are is not vulnerable. Who you think you are is vulnerable. So who you are is enlightened. Like, we are all enlightened right now. The only aspect of yourself that is not enlightened are the aspects that are still rooted in fear. And I believe that the journey of a human being is to face the aspects of yourself that you're afraid of, face the emotions that you're afraid of, face the feelings you're afraid of, face all. And that's, I believe, why particularly men have a desire to climb the tallest mountain. And, we're in this chase to do hard, scary things. My belief is that what we are desiring is to conquer the fears held within ourselves, because we have an inner knowing that actually leads to the process of what we could call enlightenment. And I believe that this quote unquote solution to the evil, quote unquote evil in the world, is actually to face the fears within the self and come into a place of light within the self. And then there's no doing necessary after that. You just be the light. The light doesn't need to do anything. It doesn't need to fix anything or move anything. It's just the more lights that come on in the world, the more lights that come on in the world. And what do you think about that? Is that some great shit?
I remember when I was a kid and I first heard this phrase, God-fearing. I thought, what? What's that? What are you fearing God for? What's that? What's going on? But then if you read the Old Testament, I guess you've got good reason to. The bloodthirsty God of the Old Testament. But the thing is that for me, you can overcome fear, or you can realize there's nothing to fear at all.
There's nothing to fear at all,
because,
except for fear itself.
Yeah, well, we are all that is, has been, and ever can be. I mean, that's as bad as it gets. What's happened is, and what you said earlier about we are enlightened, that's where I'm coming from. We are all enlightened. We are all in a state of infinite awareness.
That's the meaning of religion. Religion is just to remember.
Yeah, that part of us, which is conscious in the human realm, if you like, has forgotten and been manipulated from birth to forget that its true nature. And this separation must also generate this constant anxiety and fear that most people have all the time. I mean, people fear the future. They fear what's going to happen to their kids. They fear what's going to happen to them. They fear if they're going to pay the rent at the end of the month. They fear if they're going to keep their job. And all these things are there to create a society which generates in this separated part of us this energy that they feed off. They have to keep us in that state. They don't want us in a harmonious state. They don't want us in a connected state because they've lost us if they do. And I think that this self-identity thing, once you realize your true nature, not in a conceptual way, like, I've got this this way that I kind of conceive that I'm this, but actually in a being, in a living, in a knowing way, where you integrate that knowledge of who you are and your true nature. So many things that frighten you before don't frighten you anymore. People say to me, well, you ever think that they might take you out? Well, do it. I don't care less. I'm going home. But I mean, do it. I mean, I'm not bothered. Oh, if you say this, then we'll do this. Well, do it then, mate. I could give a shite because I'm going to say it anyway. These videos where they take clips from other videos you've done, and they put them on the internet under their own channel. And I saw one the other day just by accident, and it said the line was, it had a picture of me, and it said, I'm scared to tell you this. And I thought, no, I'm not. If I've got something to say, I'll open my mouth and say it. Because death, what's that? What is death? I mean, this is another area, and this is another area I think that is very, very relevant to what we're talking about in terms of perception and separation. I've been calling the human body since the 1990s a biological computer. Because that's what I think it is. I think it's like a equivalent to a very advanced software program. And if people think that's kind of far out, well, when's the last time you remember breathing? Well, the last time you were out of breath. I mean, the body is making tweaks and changes constantly in reaction to the environment that we're in, or the emotional or mental state that we're in. And it's happening all the time, and the conscious mind just gets on with its life. The body runs its own system. And it's my view very strongly that the body also contains psychological programs that dictate behavior and dictate perception. I think this is a massive part of what's happening. So if you look at this area at the back of the brain here, which scientists call the reptilian brain, or the R complex, I don't think that's there by accident. I think it's there by design, because it's one of the drivers of human emotional response, mental response too, but particularly emotional. Because the reptilian brain, and funnily enough, that's where they put the probe in the Matrix to take people into the Matrix, like Neo. The reptilian brain is basically scanning the environment constantly for threats to survival. Road rage comes from the reptilian brain. Fight or flight response to danger comes from the reptilian brain. And so it's scanning the environment constantly for threats to survival, not just physical survival, survival of relationships, survival of jobs, survival of everything. And so that is impacting, that reptilian brain alone is impacting upon our mental and emotional state constantly. And I think there are many other psychological programs in there. And for me, if you don't awaken to your true I consciousness and start tapping into that, the biological computer programs are driving your life. They're driving your perceptions. They're driving your behavior, which comes from perception. And they're driving your sense of everything. And, I think there's two types of synchronicity. I think there's a synchronicity where at a consciousness level, you are attracted to others at a consciousness level. But I think there's also a body program to body program synchronicity where there's attractions going on as well. And so I think that the biological computer body is something that if we don't override it, and we can override it, that's what we call awakening. When you start to awaken, you start to override the program. In other words, you start to see things differently to the program. You start to act in ways that are different to the program. You start to override it, which is what consciousness can do. It can do what it wants. It can do anything. The idea is to keep us in the body program. And what else does the body do? I say that the body is decoding the matrix. It's decoding the reality that we think we're experiencing. Because for me, the more that I have understood the way the matrix works, the more blatant it's become that this technological world that's unfolded in recent decades and is now breakneck speed, it's mirroring technologically the very reality that we're experiencing and how we experience it. So if I've got if I've got Wi-Fi in this room, I haven't, but if I did, this computer would log into it, tap into it, and it would take the information in that Wi-Fi field, the entirety of the internet, and it would put it on the screen in a completely different form. And it would all be going on inside the computer. We can look at the screen and we can see a projection of it, but it's all going on inside the computer. They're decoding everything. And if you look at how I say the matrix works, it's an information field, actually fields. It's a frequency field of information, fields of information, and it's interactive. So it's impacting upon us, but our perceptions are impacting upon it. And that's why the more people that awaken to consciousness, the more we're impacting upon the field in a different way to how it wants to be. And it's designed.
I don't know if it's how it wants to be. I think how it wants to be, actually, every kid wants to play. Every kid wants to be loved. Every family wants to work. So I think it actually goes more in coherence of how it wants to be atop or below the fracture that is rooted in fear, that goes into the psychopathy and the control and the manipulation and all that stuff. I think it's going back to how it wants to be, actually.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, it depends. It depends on this. You see, I think there are two fields, and I think they get totally misunderstood. There's the field beyond the matrix field, which if you tap into that, you're tapping into infinite reality. But if you tap only into the matrix field, you're tapping into a technologically generated reality. And when I say how it wants to be, maybe a better way of putting it would be how it's designed to be.
Yeah.
Now, we can change the way it's designed to be by our interaction with it. As we awaken, we can start to awaken that that matrix field as well. Yeah, that's absolutely. I completely
The
agree with that.
the parasite doesn't want to die, but the parasite isn't the host. And in some ways they kind of are, because everything is ultimately integrated. But I believe like the parasite will do what it can to survive. But eventually, if the host becomes healthy enough, you don't need to do anything. The parasite can't hold on to a non-fractured system. So it's the addiction to sugar, it's the addiction to porn, it's the addiction to anxiety, it's the addiction to depression, it's the addiction to anger. It's all of this shit within the self that a person's unwilling to face that actually opens them up to energetic parasites of the world. But the more a person can actually lean into themselves and release the bondage and the contractions or the impressions, some scars, if you want to use other speak, within the self, the more they become impermeable and immune to the parasites or the entities or the soul possessions or any things of the world, I believe.
Well, you can very well symbolize this entire matrix and the consciousness that's generating the matrix and generating the expressions of itself in the form of entities. You can very much symbolize it very accurately as a parasite. It's parasitical.
Yeah,
it's feeding off us, and therefore it itself, which explains a great deal, is in a state of constant fear of humanity waking up, because then it's like having a parasite cleanse, if you like. And I think a lot of the parasitical things that go on in the world, including parasites in the body and whatever, are all expressions of this energetic state that pervades the matrix. I mean, I think there's very, very good evidence, for instance, to think that at least many cancers are based on parasites and what have you. So, I agree with that. But I think that, it's a lot simpler than people think. You can take your individual, what they call dark side, and you can work on your dark side and all that stuff. And you can do that for a bloody lifetime. Or you can take a step back. You can realize it's all a frickin' illusion. It's all a manipulated illusion. All the dark side is a manipulated illusion to generate the energy that they feed off. And therefore you can step out of it rather than and become your true self instead of constantly working on your dark side. I remember once I was speaking, it was a long time ago, early 90s. I was speaking in Houston, Texas. And I was staying at this lady's house who was organizing the event. And she was very, very, she was very new age, but she was very emotionally all over the place. She was very frightened. She was walking, talking fear, really. And she was, she said to me at one point, "I've given myself permission to see my godchildren, right? I've given myself permission." And I said to her, "What do you mean you've given yourself permission? Just see them. Just see them. But there's like a structure. I've got to give myself permission to see my godchild. Why don't you just see your godchild? Why do you have to give yourself permission? Just do it." And it's this withdrawing from the crap, withdrawing from the manipulated low vibrational state that we perceive as our dark side. And the body itself is, for me, is encoded to have a bloody dark side. And then we start to self-identify with the body. So we self-identify with the dark side or whatever. Or I've got a dark side. Or maybe your body has, mate. Maybe it's not actually you. And if you just take a step back and go, look, it's all an illusion. It's all a farce. It's all manipulation. and I'm withdrawing from it, and I'll see you later. You can clear yourself of so much crap by this this perception of true self as opposed to illusory self, what I call phantom self, which most people live because most people are well, almost everyone is told to live like that.
That's the process of death and rebirth. That's why most cultures have some process of rite of passage. And the rite of passage is I think you might have told me, John the Baptist a part of baptizing people was actually like close to drowning people, to take them through a rite of passage to have like a near-death experience. And people are attached to the body, and they're clinging on to this life because they don't believe there's anything after that. Once you can come to a near-death experience type state, or maybe it's through DMT or ayahuasca or an NDE or something, so you can open up and realize, oh my God, maybe death is like taking off a tight shoe, and I don't need to be clenching onto this form as much, and I can release the fear and realize all of this is extra credit.
The thing about death, what is death? For me, it's dead simple. If people stop identifying with the body, as I was saying earlier about the computer decoding Wi-Fi, I started looking at how this all kind of worked and looking at mainstream science and all that stuff. And it's obvious to me that the body is what interacts with the matrix. Because at the end of the day, the body is also a frequency field of information. And so the five senses are locking into this matrix field, and they're locking into it on a frequency level. And then the five senses turn the frequency information into electrical information, and they send it to the brain, and the brain decodes it into a holographic form, which is the world we think is outside of us, but is actually in here. Just like the computer is decoding everything inside itself, so I'd say that we're doing the same. So what's happening is, from the moment the body starts forming in the womb, it's starting to deliver a sense of reality. It's starting to deliver this decoded holographic reality that we experience as physicality. And you go through life, and it's like if you go onto the YouTube and put in a series of words to get a compilation of people reacting to virtual reality games, it's quite extraordinary to watch. They'll put on a headset, and more sophisticated ones have the gloves and the audio and everything, but they put on a headset, and someone's standing in a room they're very familiar with, but they put on the headset and suddenly they're in another bloody world. And now they're screaming, they're running, they're falling over, whatever, in response to what's being delivered to their sense of awareness. And basically what these games do with the gloves and the audio and the headset is they hijack the five senses. They're overriding the five senses and what they would normally decode with this external reality of the virtual reality game. Now, if we imagine what you can do is take the headset off, and suddenly you're back where you were before, and or your mind is, and you think, oh my God, it was only a game. But if the biological computer is decoding the matrix into the reality that we experience, then as soon as it forms in the womb, it's delivering a reality to you. And all the way through your life, it's delivering that reality to you. And you can't take the headset off except when you die. And when you die, what happens? The biological computer ceases to function. And because it ceases to function, it ceases to decode the matrix, and consciousness finds itself in a completely different reality. It's what near-death experiences are describing, very, very common themes, because that it's no longer being delivered, this decoded reality, through the biological computer. And that's all death is. We don't die. Obviously, the body ceases to ceases to function. And the whole idea of death within the Matrix is to frighten the bloody life out of people, of being frightened of death, and it's one of the great producers of this anxiety energy that they feed off is fear of death. What happens after death? What's happened to my loved ones who've died and what have you? Well, they've just gone on to another dimension of reality. The consciousness doesn't die; it just transforms itself.
Can I ask you a few rapid fires, like a dumb generic thing, but a few questions like that?
Okay.
Why do royal families tend to interbreed?
Royal families interbreed because they're trying to hold a specific genetic code. And that code has to do with their hybrid nature. And if they interbreed outside of that hybrid genetics, if you like, hybrid frequency, then it gets diluted very fast. That's why they don't want often to marry the people they are attracted to. They marry according to dictate the genetic partner they're supposed to interact with, and they'll be attracted to other people outside of the marriage, if you like. And what is this hybrid bloodline? It is a dual field of information. So what we're doing all the time is that this body is decoding frequency field information. So if I looked at you, your body would be, if I looked at you on another level, your body would be a field of information. But through the decoding process, like the computer decodes Wi-Fi, I would see a human, because the human or the information field is a human information field. And when you have these hybrid bloodlines, you have a human information field. That's the one that they project at the world, overwhelmingly, of course, for obvious reasons. And in the background is another information field, which is a non-human information field, reptilian or whatever field it may be. Reptilian seems to be a dominant one with royals. And so I'm looking at the person with their human field, the dominant one, and I'm decoding a human. And I've had this described to me all over the world so many times now, the non-human field becomes the dominant one of the hybrid. And to the observer and the decoding of the observer, someone has just shifted from a solid human to a solid non-human, and then often back again. But that's not what's happened, because people say, oh, no, you're shape-shifting. That's ridiculous. You can't go from a solid body to a solid body. Do you know something? You can't. But that's not what's happening. It's all, the shape-shifting is all, in terms of the physical shape-shifting, is all done with the decoding processes of the observer, who decode a human body. The human body is then overridden by the non-human body, and it seems as if there's been this shift. It's an information shift which we have decoded into an apparently physical shift. And these bloodlines, these hybrid bloodlines, have been interbreeding with each other all the way through known human history. This is what royal bloodlines are all about. You know, the divine right to rule and all that stuff. It's because they are trying to hold a specific genetic structure. And that's why they see them, same with aristocracy, the blue bloods and all that stuff. That's why they see themselves as superior to the rest of the population. But what happened when humanity reached a point of maturity where it started to reject rule by royal succession, who had sex with who in what order. And they had to replace that with another form of control, which appeared to give people power to select the government. And so we had politics replacing royalty. Still in some places like Britain, we still have a royal family, but it was basically politics replaced royalty. And what happened is these hybrid bloodlines, they didn't disappear. They just went underground, if you like. They went into the dark suit professions of politics, of business and banking and corporations and what have you. And they've gone on interbreeding with each other ever since, in the knowledge that of the fact that they're different to the rest of humanity. And that's why so many people I've met over the years who've had direct interaction with royalty, including attending some of the bloody satanic rituals of royals, that they talk about experiencing how they were shape-shifting in the rituals when they are among people that they can trust.
Do you believe that we have landed on the moon?
Well, the moon is a massive story, because I don't think the moon is what we would call natural. I think it was brought here. And, I've picked up different cultural beliefs and stories and accounts and shamanistic accounts around the world, which have this common theme that the moon has not always been there, and that it actually has come relatively recently from an evolution point of view as it's perceived by science, and that actually the inside of the moon is where it's all going on. It's not going on the surface. It's going on inside. And I think that that's where a lot of manipulation of the Earth comes from. If you look at the impact of the moon on the Earth in terms of tides and in terms of emotion, you can see that that potentially is there. And it's interesting that when I've talked to people like Credo Mutwa, the great Zulu shaman, who told me the story of what he called two brothers in Zulu accounts, called Umpanki, Wawani and Umpanku, and how they were reptilian in nature, and how they brought the moon. And then you go to the north end of Africa and into Sumeria and Sumer and the Sumerian texts. And suddenly you have the story of the Anunnaki and the two brothers, Enki and Enlil. And there are obviously great common themes between what the Zulus talk about in terms of their two brothers and the version in Sumer. And I have talked to military people in the U.S. military particularly, who have talked about being in the moon, of going to the moon. And so the moon is a massive center for this whole control of humanity, in my view. And there are many, many endless elements of it. I mean, there's so many anomalies to do with the moon. It's ridiculous that don't make any sense. And so have we been to the moon? Well, if we've been to the moon, then it's been on the understanding that it was okay with that which controls the moon. But I remember 1969, and I was playing for Coventry City Football Club at the time. And I remember watching the moon landings live as it was claimed. And when I see them now, I mean, it's almost a joke. It's like really, really bad special effects, and you get deeper into how they did it and all the background to it, and it makes no sense at all. Have they been in more modern craft? Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe the whole thing's just a hoax. We can't know for sure, but certainly from the evidence that I've seen over a long period of time, like evidence on top of evidence on top of evidence on top of evidence, the moon is a massive center for manipulation of human society, and there are what is dominated and controlled by non-humans.
Are there any prominent figures, political figures, celebrities that you would know to be confirmed reptile people or something of the sort?
Well, it's difficult to say because you've got to actually directly experience it, or at least you've got to come across people who have, with credibility and confirmed through other sources, who've experienced it directly. And I've met many, many people who have done that. So I can speak very confidently about the royals, and the royals in general, not just the British royals. I'm talking about royals in general. That's where the bloodline comes from. It's where the whole idea of royalty comes from. But you can certainly pick up the reptilian traits of psychopathy, and not necessarily all reptilians, but the ones I'm talking about, the manipulative ones. And you can see reptilian personalities. So if I'm looking at people like Tony Blair, for instance, he's got all the reptilian traits. I'd be shocked if he wasn't part of that. And many others too, in the same kind of behavior system that they so often generate. But it's a case of coming across people, credible people, that you can support with other sources that have actually seen these people in their reptilian state. I wouldn't like to just pick people out unless I'm absolutely certain.
Yeah, of course. What is the most surprising thing you foresee coming to light in the coming year in the media, or coming to light with awareness of humanity?
Well, I think when I look back, I'd been thinking through the 1990s, the latter part of the 1990s. I think this is a simulation. But I didn't have enough to go public with it. Just after the turn of the millennium, I became sure that it was a simulation. And I looked around for people who were saying the same. And I've basically only found one person in the public eye. That was a guy called Nick Bostrom. He was a professor at the time at Oxford University, who he didn't see the simulation in the same way that I did, but at least he was talking publicly about the fact he thought that this could be a simulated reality. And then as the years passed, particularly from 2016 onwards, I started to see more and more mainstream scientists. Remember a NASA scientist called Rich Terrell, in their computer area, went public, I think it was in 2016, 2017, saying that he thought this was a simulation, that it was a holographic simulation, and that because it was simulated, it must have been created by some form of intelligence. And I thought, well, that's exactly how I see it. And I've seen other people now in mainstream science start to talk about this and say, well, it does actually look like it's some kind of simulation. So I do think that the move is, because, it's like everything. In 1996, when I started coming across this reptilian thing, 95, 96, I went on the fledgling internet and I put in some words to do with, extraterrestrial, reptilians, whatever. And I remember I got 33 pages. And it's like, that was it. Well, you put the words to that effect on the internet now, and you'll get thousands of pages, depending on what search engine it is. So there has been this awakening and this encompassing of, well, maybe this is not so crazy. And what I was just saying about looking around for this, anyone that was publicly talking about a simulation, well, it was very, very few just after the turn of the millennium. But now you put, reality is a simulation or something in a YouTube search or an internet search, and you'll see the number of mentions and videos and articles there are about that now. And I do think that we are heading towards a time when ever more people, including those in mainstream science, more of them, are going to start to take this more and more seriously. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next few years for sure.
Amazing. Hey, thank you so much. I really enjoy getting to have conversations with you. I really appreciate you and who you are, the work you've done, the shit that you put up with, and just the way you deliver messages. So I really appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much.
All right. That is it. That is all. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, you might also enjoy this episode over here, as well as this one over here. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you. I'll see you in the next video.